This is the Non-Tech Podcast, conversations about education, technology, and culture, with Dr. Doug Reed and Dr. Matt Stranick. Thank you for joining us.
My name is Dr. Doug Reed, and I am located in Abagway, the traditional and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people.
My name is Dr. Matthew Stranick, and I am located in Menakwisk in St. John, New Brunswick, which is situated on the traditional and unceded territory of the Wolastoqiyik Maliseet people.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of the Non-Tech Podcast. As you can see from the caption, my name is Matt Streamlord Stranick, and I'm here as ever with Dr. Doug Reed. How are things going today, Doug?
Hey, everybody. Good. As good as could be expected. I'm still a little sore from that car accident, but other than that, we're fine. We're rolling right along.
Yeah.
How about yourself? You had a big move?
Well, big in that it's certainly life-changing for me, but this is actually the easiest move that I've ever encountered as an adult, wherein all I had to do was go from my super nice museum-y, antique-y apartment furnished, which was larger than a lot of houses I've owned in terms of square footage. All I had to do was literally go out the front door of my unit, down one short curving flight of stairs, and through the back door of my new apartment, which is still pretty significant in terms of square footage. It's a garden suite. I prefer not to call it the basement suite. It's a garden suite because it does in fact back onto a patch of grass, which one could construe as a garden. So it's within the same building, still fully furnished, and basically the people who are renting it to me, my landlords, shout out to Tony and Dee Dee as just being possibly the nicest people in the world outside of my late grandparents. Because they were just like, yeah, we're living in this unit right now, but we'll just move out into one of our other properties and let you move in so you can save some bucks on your rent. And they're charging me less than half of what I was paying for upstairs with the same level of benefits, shall we say, in terms of utilities, in terms of furnishings, and it's just, ooh. And it's totally bespoke. They've won awards for doing this to other historical properties in St. John. So it's like it's got the most sleek, ultra modern walk-in shower you could possibly want. It's I really could go on. These people are so nice, and their thing here is just so convenient, and now convenient married to affordability for this learning development specialist. So there. Thanks for asking, pal.
Yeah, no worries. Glad to help.
Good, man. So what are we talking about today? What are we on about today? I do know, but just barely at this point. So.
Okay. What I wanted to talk about today is presenting educational material, and more specifically, decisions that people make with fonts. That's where I really want to dig in. And
I
there's
was
a reason
so
why.
surprised.
Why?
I'm
a random guy.
Out of all the things we talk about, I just like, okay, it's not AI, it's not, it's not this or that. It's like fonts. It's like I have literally taught this topic in an education grad class for UMB, as Wes within a course on instructional design. So I feel that there's never a bad time to talk about fonts. I'm just curious as to what specifically triggered that off for you, bud.
So what I have is a number of things came together in serendipity. One is I love fonts. And I think that how you change fonts changes your message. And I'm also a lifelong learner. And I had a novice educator, like they have a long career in their field and now they're a novice educator. And I mentioned, oh, have you thought about using Dyslexie? That font that was specifically designed to help dyslexic people.
Oh, cool.
Because it's supposed to do this and that and the other thing. And that font's got to be nearly 20 years old now. And then he came back with, hey, did you know this and this and this? Because he had taken it and talked to other people. And it's like, okay, my information was out of date. So I get annoyed when other people throw stuff at me that's 20 years ago. So it's like, okay, let's be a lifelong learner. Let's dig into this and let's find out what I've been missing for 20 years because I've been resting on my laurels. And what I found out was there's huge gaps in the literature. So if anybody's looking for a research topic, my goodness, this would be a good one to figure out what fonts work best in education. So that's
okay. So that's fascinating. And I guess I would just say, does that change your opinion about that font, which is, the helpful font? You know what I mean? So is it simply that it was based on flawed science, or is it still something that people use? I guess what's like the most current version of accessibility standard-ish font that you're aware of?
Well, that's the fun thing. It is kind of based on no science, but it just became one of those things. And I was shocked that there is no real, there's really vague suggestions, but there's no specific, this works best, that doesn't, which is why some researchers should pick this up.
Right on.
So when you taught this, I didn't know you taught a course that involved fonts. So what's your baseline for your thoughts on fonts?
Well,
education?
okay. So when I say that, I mean, I say, well, I haven't taught the course for many years, and it was one small part of a much larger course. But having said that, I am very much partial to sans serif fonts. So the ones that are like without the hanging parts at the ends, the serif, as it were. And I don't know so much that that's personal preference, but I know that over the past, 5 or 6 years, I've gone, for instance, in my Word documents from using a serif font, Times New Roman, if you will, to switching into using Arial. And again, that's just something where I don't even know if I read in the guidelines or any of this teaching material from that class or whatever, but it does seem to me, which a Google search could certainly remedy, find out one way or the other, is that sans serif fonts are typically considered better from a reading standpoint because I think that they are less conducive to eye strain, if I'm not mistaken. And I just think for me, it looks cooler, it looks cleaner, it looks more minimal. And yeah. So I've lately sort of become an entrenched Arial size, preferably Arial size 13. I even like the slightly enlarged over the size 11 or 12 default because I'm a 45-year-old man and my eyeballs are starting to reflect that a bit. So what about you, Doug? I mean, apart from your sort of, what's your go-to font, I guess you could say? Do you just go with the default in a document typically, or what do you aim for?
No, I never go with the default font. I don't know if you've
Right.
noticed, but in all the materials I share with you, it's
Yep.
Comforta in the Google Docs, because
Really?
it's sans serif and it's nice and big. Everyone, if sometimes with some of the like the spreadsheet documents, it might be Seaford or something, but it's never. They don't have serifs because a lot of the research that I looked at is about dyslexia, about how
Yep.
like letters switch and flip around and all that stuff. And you walked us right to the Gasser, Boak, Heffernan, Tan 2005 article that I looked
Awesome.
at. The influence of font types on info recall. And it's the one thing in their article was the presence of sans serif font was found to be significant, right? It's like, get rid of all those little twisty curly things on the ends, because that flips it around. It makes it harder to read, basically.
Yes.
And they found potentially a 9% improvement in recall. And
Okay.
they also said the spacing doesn't matter. And that was 2005. And as we get
Really?
farther along, we're going to find out that more research has gone in and said spacing is the most important thing. It's more important than serif, sans serif. And that's part of the gap in the literature that some research students should pick up and run with.
Okay. Heads up to you to you grad students out there.
Yeah, if you're looking for something, it's a giant gap. There's plenty of room to dig around and figure stuff out. And I'm a font nerd from way back. Like, I think I mentioned it in a previous podcast, that back in the day, back when the internet was much younger, like in the 90s, people would create fonts and put them up. And I would download them because they were free to download. They were all that stuff. And then weeks later, they would disappear. Like, so I have fonts, like I have hundreds of fonts that probably don't even exist anymore, other than on my computer and on the computer of a handful of other people in the world.
Fantastic. So it sort of goes along with the previous topic of curatorship, I suppose. So maybe perhaps then my initial thought that this has some disjuncture with past topics is actually perhaps bears a second pass, because curating the message vis-a-vis font choices can be a really significant thing in and of itself, apparently. As I think about it, as you speak to these points here, Doug. So I appreciate your bringing this forward for a bit more of an inspection here. Very cool.
Yeah, thanks. So a lot of the research has been about dyslexia. That seems to be where most people have come from. But one of the problems is nobody's decided what the important factors are, which is part of the problem. Like, are we looking at recall? Are we looking at reading time? Are we looking at reading accuracy? Are we looking at like fixed duration of reading? Like, there's no set standards yet for what makes a good education font and what helps the students more. So that's someplace that is just waiting for parameters to get put around it and say, hey, this is what we need to do. And here's why. So when, like years and years ago, back when I had a little bit more money, I bought a boat and had to change the name, because apparently that's the first thing you have to do when you buy a boat. Like, my boat wasn't fancy, but I loved it, right? It did everything I wanted, everything I needed. And I used a font called Tolkien Shire. And somebody had kind of taken the Lord of the Rings font and made it their own and done some stuff and put it someplace for free. And it looks all like kind of like old and weathered and parchment-y kind of stuff.
Fantastic.
So I got that, and I put the vinyl letters on my boat, and people came to me and said, oh, your boat, the letters are peeling off. And I'm like, no, they're not. Like, it's done like that on purpose. So if the letters start to peel off, it'll just look like normal. So it's how are we using the font? What decisions are we doing with fonts? And why are we doing it? You see, and part of my personality is I can't use Arial and Times New Roman because those are the standard defaults. I've spent my life not being able to go down the path of the standard default.
Okay.
So when in previous episodes, we've talked about how our life paths are so different and how nobody should follow our path.
Correct.
So it's kind of cool that you're using the standard.
Well, okay.
fonts.
So to the extent so first of all, good observation of kind of catching the kettle calling the pot black or something like this. I will say, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to my pretty, when it comes to my word processing, when it comes to my Word, document kind of activities, when it comes to those things, basic office communication, if you will. And I suppose that includes anything to do with Outlook, email formatting. I definitely will go with one of your three kind of standard choices, which for me tends to be Arial. Having said that, for those who follow the blog part of the podcast, the WordPress site, and extra special points if you're somebody who checks the punk music podcast and reads that blog, extra points, because the fonts on both of those blogs have been very intentionally made using Google fonts that were available. I wasn't prepared to spend money to download fonts for this show. I suppose that's not outside the realm of possibility. However, I use for the blog post, actually, I suppose I'm still going to keep using it, but I recognize now that it's probably not ideal because of it's a serif-based font called Zen Antique, which I'm partial to just because I like. It's kind of classy. It just to me sort of has. It's like it's minimal as far as a serif font goes, in my opinion. So I quite like that. And then for the other podcast, we use for anything to do with headings, Metal Mania, which is like actually, rock music-ish in all caps. And then to go with the a sort of DIY aesthetic, use the Courier sort of ish typography, right? The block sort of font. In Word, it's called Courier New. So whatever the equivalent of that is, like the old typewriter kind of ones, fonts. So
yes,
I think, and I've installed plugins into both the WordPress sites. So the Google font plugin is necessary for these three fonts that I want to use throughout. So then that involves specifically putting in the plugin. And then sometimes you have to update the plugin separately from the rest of the installation and yada, yada. But that administrivia is a small price to pay for crafting it just the way that you would envision it. So I hear what you're saying, pal. When it comes to just sort of office-based whatever stuff, I don't see reason to deviate actually from the defaults. But then when it comes to this other kind of endeavor, it's definitely something where every aesthetic choice matters deeply. So thank you for hearing my rant.
If you were, no, it's not a rant because I want to jump off on it and say, let's get rid of, let's go to your other podcast and what is it, Metal Mania or whatever that font title. Let's change that to Lucinda Handwriting. Do you think that changes the message that you're sending if you go from one to the other?
I think it's cute. I think I'm tempted now to do both these next episode notes in completely contrary font choices, just for giggles, as it were. I don't think I'm gonna, but it's still a neat thought to maybe consider doing sometime under the alternate reality versions of shows, which we could do sometime.
And it would also be a learning opportunity, like for people that are listening to this and checking out the website, it's like, whoa, what font did they put that in? Oh my God, that's so hard to read. What are they doing? Oh, I like this or I hate this. And they could get that emotional reaction to the learning opportunity, which sometimes
and at
really
which
helps
point they
sink
would
in.
just, and at which point they probably just would not come back because it's like these guys are too much and not in a good way. But I would like somebody to invent a plugin. If any web developers are out there, if you can invent a plugin for Google Chrome, so like an extension plugin that renders the entire internet in Comic Sans, like just whatever the font that you're looking at, it overwrites it and it turns it into Comic Sans. I'll bet that would be supremely popular. I would be in line for that. I might even pay a subscription fee of up to $10 to $15 a month to see the entire internet at all times through Comic Sans. What do you think of my idea, Doug?
I think that we didn't even make it 20 minutes without mentioning Comic Sans. That's how much Comic Sans has impacted our culture. And the history I have heard of Comic Sans was it was never meant to be a font. It was an art school project.
Oh,
It was never meant to be a font. It was only meant to be this project. And then somebody said, oh, let's include that because it looks fun. And now people love it or they hate it if they pay attention to fonts at all. And I know what side you're on.
it's a bellwether. It's like, okay, we can tell so much about this person based on their instinctive reaction to Comic Sans. I quite agree with you, pal. I'm like somebody who feels that people should be cognitively separated from the internet more than they are. And to me, that's just appeals to all my sort of like ironic and useless sort of interests, like on the what do you call it, the sandbox site with those H5P rendered turkeys that are in different styles by AR artists. It's like nobody's going to appreciate that, and I get it. So to me, it's just like anti-aesthetically, kind of anti-aesthetic aesthetic is kind of what I see the appeal there. I'm a cynical, bitter, twisted little man, so I do tend to prefer Comic Sans.
Yeah, there are times when I like it too. But again, I have hundreds that I scroll through and then I feel bad if I don't use them all at different times. So
Wow, you really are sort of like how I am with the record collection, right? Because I feel bad if I don't listen to certain records at certain points. And you're describing that feeling when it comes to fonts, my friend.
Yeah, I really enjoy them. So I want to jump to the next article. So we're gonna.
Yeah.
We have Rello and Baza Yates from 2013, and it's good fonts for dyslexia. So again, a lot of the early font research that I could find in education was about dyslexia, and basically all they say is that the font has a significant impact on the text accessibility. They don't really describe what accessibility is. They have some measures, but they don't wrap it up really nice. And a lot of the stuff that they talk about is they're really looking at dyslexia, people with dyslexia and people that don't have dyslexia. And there are some things that we mentioned a bunch of them. We've mentioned Arial and Courier, and we haven't mentioned the Roman fonts, but we don't have to dig into that. We have mentioned sans serif, and they found that people without dyslexia, it's not significant, right? There's no significant impact if it's sans serif or not. But people that have dyslexia, it is absolutely significant. But then they say spacing doesn't really matter. And then later, more recently, we're going to find that spacing is the one thing that matters. Font doesn't matter; it's only spacing. So it's a big enough space there to drive a PhD thesis through if somebody's so interested. And
Okay,
part of
well,
this has impacted, part of this has impacted websites. Because you know the way you were talking about your plugins, your Google plugins and fonts and stuff?
yep.
Did you ever have to make web pages back in the day before HTML5 and cascading style sheets were really a thing?
Sounds wretched. I wouldn't want to try it.
Yeah, that's kind of how old I am.
Okay.
But there used to be a way that you could set the fonts. You could say, okay, here are your font choices that will display, right? And you could write the code and say, okay, make it one of the Arial family or make it a Times New Roman family. And you could set that stuff up. And that's why you could make a website and make it all look really pretty and cool. And then you'd look at it on a different computer and it'd look just like the old one. So you've jumped past that solution with your plugins, which I am very thankful for, because I don't want to do that code ever again.
I'm full of ideas that'll never come to fruition here, pal. But I like that I got a space to bring those at least in some way to the public consciousness.
Which is perfect, right? That's what we're doing. We're learning and we're trying to help some other people learn a little bit.
Truly.
Now I want to jump to the Piptker 2013 article about reading performance of dyslexics with
Good
a special
pronunciation,
font
dude.
and colored background.
Good, please.
I hope it is. I apologize if it wasn't. Because way back in the day, when I was a classroom teacher, they said, oh, if you're teaching a student with dyslexia, get those little plastic blue sheets and slide the piece of paper into that little envelope-y thing. And if it's blue, that will help the students read better. Oh. And I took that as, okay, that's the rule. And so I've always suggested that, like even to the point where I've got students that have gone and bought that plastic stuff and taped it over their monitors, just so it's a different background color for them.
Wow.
And they said it improved it. So
I've never heard of this intervention before.
Done any sort? Really? Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. Because that's where I was going next, because you have color vision and I don't as much. So whenever it comes to colors, I'm going to default to you as the expert because I'm not sure if you're seeing what I'm seeing.
Yeah, well, I think the main thing here is that apart from just kind of whether or not I can appreciate or envision your experience of the sense of sight, short of having like a neurological scan or breakdown of that variety, I guess I would just say that as long as you can function to the point that you feel the usability is there, that you feel that you can act with agency on most websites, most web experiences, because the use of messaging, formatting, headings, all of that is sufficiently usable. Now, if you're talking about the quality of that usage, this is where the intentionality of your choice comes to bear. This is where, as we become a nation of people, a first sort of world of people who are spending large amounts of their day online. Like I do, like we have SharePoint at work. We have SharePoint at work, so I don't even bother to have Word, Office on my machine anymore, because all of it's just 360 based stuff, cloud-based apps, cloud-based documents. So it's just, we're at the point now with this stuff where it would be nice if somebody made some more informed choices. But because it's Microsoft, I mean, if we were to go through the Microsoft font library, I'm sure there's all kinds of stuff where I would just go, really? Wow, they have that. But yeah, I just like that the intentionality is the capability for intentionality is there, I suppose is what I'm trying to say.
And for me, I like pressing the little button in SharePoint that says open in the app or edit in the app, because I just find the Word gives me more options rather than just the online version.
Right.
I don't know if it does or if I just know where the options are, but it's the same difference. It's the same difference. We found our way to work, and it works well. Now, this reading performance article is something where I'm doing a mea culpa. I'm doing a my bad. When I learned this information about use a different color background, like use the blue sleeve so that things look bluer, I was being told that when I was teaching 10-year-olds. And some of those 10-year-olds may not have been the best readers. So the information they gave me might have been correct at the time, but I extrapolated that to it's a rule. And I've spread it across all levels of readers and all ages of readers. And it's like, okay, these people just informed me that that's not the case at all. I get to be the lifelong learner, and I get to adjust my understandings, because what they did, there's at least 5 different fonts that have been built to try to help dyslexics with the flipping of the letters. And they took one called Dyslexie, which I believe comes out of the Netherlands, and they put a yellow background. So instead of the white background on the document, it was a yellow background. And they said that really works with people with lower reading levels. But people with higher reading levels, it doesn't really make a difference. And I had never made that leap. I just assumed it was the rule. And I just, again, it's my way of saying, okay, I guess I don't know everything. Time to keep learning. Time to take that piece of information from, yes, it's so because it's so, and let's investigate that a little more.
A humbling moment, to be sure, in a career which is full of humbling moments.
Yep, that is exactly it.
Good stuff, man. So then what do we got next here? Keeping it rolling in terms of the articles, pal.
We have another Rello and Bazia Yates. And
Fantastic.
It's just interesting because this is a couple of years later, so we can see how it moved. We can see how their research is progressing. And it's the effect of font type on screen readability, because now they've added another factor, right? Because reading on a piece of paper and reading on a screen and reading on a billboard, those are all vastly different, and they all get mushed in together. And one thing that really freaked me out was when they said 10 to 17.5% of the population have dyslexia. And I was like, whoa, that's crazy. That means if I'm teaching a classroom with 20, 30 kids, I'm not dealing with one person that might have a bit of dyslexia. I'm dealing with 3, 5, 7, right? Like that, those numbers are very different depending on the size. And I've never adjusted for that, right? I try to do what I think is best in best practice to help everybody. So if we go back to Universal Design for Learning, UDL, maybe I'm addressing that, but I'm not consciously addressing it for the most part.
So based on what you're saying here, I mean, first of all, it sounds like you've done everything you can, or within that moment, to try and improve the experience of the learners under your care to the extent that you, based on the information you were being given, based on the practices you were being given. What I would suggest is you've been trying these things kind of as an individual actor. This is where I think having good communities of practice tends to be helpful in education, so that when there are viable practices, it can actually be shared, disseminated, whether it's down the hallway or having meetings specifically, locally source solutions for problems among teacher cohorts, among older educators or more senior educators, I suppose, sharing with junior colleagues some standards and practices and resources which can be helpful. I think that is perhaps somewhat lacking when it comes to matters to do with accessibility, when it comes to matters to do with message design. There's not really, in my experience in departments in colleges and universities, it just sort of seems largely like when it comes to how you present your materials, it's just kind of like, well, I like this font or that font. Well, it's just, why? Or anything to do with anything to do with accessibility, it becomes a matter, well, a student has requested an accommodation and therefore I need to make some kind of change. So I appreciate what you're on to here, Bud, because it sort of says, why can't we be proactive? Why can't we use universal design or other practices to try and take care of people before even they necessarily need to approach with a request for modification or what have you? Again, sorry for a bit of a tangent there,
No, no.
pal, but yeah, it's just you've got me thinking here is all.
I would only change one thing in everything you just said, and
Okay.
it was the senior colleagues providing mentorship and support or whatever to junior colleagues, because this was a very junior colleague that provided me mentorship and leadership, because it was the exact opposite. I had my fixed idea, and then he provided some more info. I dug deeper and thought, yep, he's right. I gotta adjust my thought process.
Awesome. So again, same thought.
80-20 rule?
Yeah, I have very much.
We're on
I'd be
the same
interested to
page.
hear.
So I'm wondering your thoughts, because what I've been doing, like with my universal design for learning, the way I set up my learning materials, I put my effort into like the 80%, the large chunk of the students, and I try to help them as much as possible. And then if I have students with particular needs, then that's where the other 20% of the effort comes into. And sometimes I don't have the time. Sometimes it's just too much. So if I can help everybody at one time as much as possible, that's kind of my default. But I know you have some varied work experiences that might be different for you.
Well, I would just say I was really interested to hear you mention the 80-20 rule. And how you might contextualize that in terms of this topic. For those who maybe haven't necessarily heard, this is a concept, Pareto's principle, an economist mid-20th century named Pareto, go figure, from Italy, go figure. And through his research on conceptual models and things within economics, he sort of found through his cases and things that he looked at that essentially 80% of a product's value comes from 20% of its feature set. And this is almost always true. So then if you look at where people's value comes from within even their jobs, their roles, it's about 80% of what you spend your time on within your job is about to do with 20% of what your functioning is. So if we can perhaps get out of these narrow, I guess, silos in terms of how we look at things, and to speak to Doug's point, try and reach perhaps the 20% of students who are not being properly reached, whether it's through dyslexia or other kinds of these sort of special needs. I know that's not the correct term, but people who have things that are undiagnosed, undocumented learning disabilities. I'm sure there are just tons of people who, just because of the way that services for catching these things and developing them or working with them, I can't help but think that there's just a lot of kids who are struggling in school and they just think that they're not awesome at school. So having departmental or hallway or whatever kinds of communities of practice, even departmental teams or whatever, to sort of have accessibility front and center, or better still, to have it as a practice that is built into what you do. I guess I would say, Doug, to wind this down from an anecdote or whatever to being a question to you, I guess, to what extent do you have content, instructional content or whatever within your role? And I guess to what extent do you consider or need to consider accessibility?
I had a previous role a couple of years ago where I was running a team, and accessibility was the most gigantic thing. I ran all the online learning at a university.
Oh, wow.
And we had to build, we used the cascading style sheets for our web pages for all our online courses to put structures in place to help students, like even with the screen readers, right? Like you can't just put a freaking graph in, and somebody with vision issues won't be able to read it. So they're using a screen reader, and then what just says, oh yes, chart of example A. Well, that tells them nothing. There's no content there. So how else do you put alt tags in there? And how else do you put alternate stuff for the screen readers to pick up? So that has been a huge part of my life, because one of my rules is, and I picked this up from an artist friend of mine, they said never use color for navigation, ever. Oh. So if you have an image that really matters and it's something important, people cheat and just use colors. And it's like, no, you can't do that, because you're getting rid of between 3 to 6% of the population that can't see your triggers there. You can't see your direction points. So on my team, the people I worked with, they would come to me and said, is this design okay? And they would design whatever images or graphics for all these different courses. And I'm like, I don't understand this. And they're like, oh, well, that's because this color is. And it's like, I don't see that color that way. These ones are too close. Like I can see the basic colors that I need in everyday life, but there are so many charts and diagrams that are like, okay, that's pointless. All the shades are too close. I can't see it. And it's one of those foolish things. So I don't have a disability that I know of, other than my personality, I guess. But other than that, right, it's how do we set it up? How do we make this work? And especially with fonts. The reason I'm picking on fonts is because reading and math are the two most important things in education, right? And the way our school structures work, if they can read and do math, they'll do fine. All the rest is important, but it's window dressing. If they can't do those two things, that's where the struggles are going to be. That's I'll get off my soapbox, but that's where I'm at.
Wow. Okay. Well, I mean, again, thank you for that very serious and I dare say heartfelt sort of and personal kind of go round on that topic. I think that's this is all making the implicit explicit, I think, is one thing that we keep coming back to on the show. So it's sort of like if we talk and acknowledge things about, I guess, sensory or other kinds of varying abilities, not saying disabilities, various abilities, if we can use practices universally, if you will, accepted practices to the UDL internet is better for everybody. That's when you're making choices that sort of benefit a cohort of students through making UDL choices and things like that. You are in fact doing that for everybody's benefit. That's kind of an underlying tenet of it, hence the universal in UDL, right? So this is awesome, pal.
Yeah.
So this next reference you got here, sorry?
Just before we get there, I got one last thing. One reason
Okay.
why I like this 2016 article is they summarized it as size matters, spacing doesn't.
Okay.
And how dare academics make a stand and make a comment that simple? It just, I really liked it. They just got to the point. Here's what we found. And a bunch of the other research said exactly the opposite. Right? So many people are pushing spacing now, and oh, you can go into Word, like you can go into Word and set that up. That changes the spacing of the words and the letters in a Word document now.
Yeah.
Is that what it's called? Okay.
It is. Yeah.
I was still excited.
You should be.
So, yeah, well, I'm learning new stuff, right? I haven't looked at it in 20 years because I didn't need to. I knew the answer. Now I realize that maybe I don't know the answer, and let's keep an open mind and see what else there is to learn.
The joys of getting older, pal. An enhanced perspective, an enhanced willingness to put aside your preconceptions and a priori assumptions. It's a good thing. Some of the benefits. So now we've got a multi-author article, Galliano et al. I'm going to say from 2023. So this very year, folks. This very year.
Yes, they were examining a very, very particular font. And what was great here, they started to grapple with the objective measures. And they made them explicit. It's reading time, reading accuracy, fixed duration. And they said that's what readability is for us, which is really nice, right? Like they're doing the research, they get to decide what these words mean and what the structures are of their theoretical framework, which is fantastic. So what they found is that this particular fault, I'm not even sure how to pronounce it, Lucille. This Lucille shows less effects on readability. So I'm assuming that's a good thing, right? It's like, yeah, this doesn't impact readability. This doesn't make it harder for people to read. So that was literally it. And this was about low vision readers. This wasn't about dyslexia or people with dyslexia. It was about a different type of why we have to present things a certain way. And that we could slide into the graphic design and all that kind of stuff, but it was just people are actually now not just publishing and researching about dyslexia. It's about a vast array of things. And I realize that research is happening outside of education, but now it's starting to come in because now with the tools that we have at our availability, at our fingertips, we can do more of that. And we have to start making more conscious decisions rather than just saying, no, that's what was there. That's what the computer was set up for. So that's what I'll do. And if those decisions are good, great. But you're sitting just on the default is not making the decision. You're not being a pedagogue.
Oh, touche.
So that's kind of where I'm at.
Touche. On behalf of all of those who would somehow dare to envision a world with a less rich set of fonts, with less intentionality behind those choices, we say poo-poo to that. Down with that. Completely and utterly down with that. One last thing I wanted to kind of slip into the show, just sort of relevant but not quite, is that just around the time that you slid me this as the topic, so within the past week or so, I'm not sure, Doug, if you're familiar with a band from Chicago. They're pretty popular as far as an indie band. They're called Wilco. Have you heard of Wilco? They're led by Jeff Tweedy.
Yes.
Okay. They've been going for about 20, 25 years at this point, and they're really, really freaking good. They've got some pretty, what I would say are considered classic albums, but then some other stuff that's kind of hit and miss, in my opinion, most of it being hit and miss, really, but the good stuff is really good. Anyway, this is all to say that aside from checking out some of their records, which I would recommend people do because they're awesome, is that they've released their own font this past week, and it's called Loft Songs. Loft because that's where they practice. That's the name that they have for their practice and rehearsal and recording space. And I'm on their wilcostore.com right now, and you can purchase this font for 30 American dollars. And I'm almost tempted to do that, except I'm not sure why. It's just I'm looking at the advertising right now, like examples of the contact sheets and things with the usage of it, and I'm like, man, but I don't know that I can necessarily justify $30 on it, but still, I think it's kind of neat that it exists. And if you are a fan of Wilco, they're sort of eccentric. They kind of go off on tangents with their music and their lyrics and their albums. They've been known to. So this is, in actual fact, the most Wilco thing in the world. Not even that the font exists, but that it's hanging out there so that record nerd dads such as me can spend $30 on it just because why not? Because I've already spent on the 10 deluxe album reissue of Yankee Hotel Foxtrot. Like, sure. I mean, I'm sure it's just a matter before they have their own IPA or whatever coming out. So speaking of curatorship, knowing who your audience is, Wilco knows who their audience is, and they know that their audience is nerdy enough and also awesome enough to appreciate a good custom font. So there.
That's a good one. I like that. I like that story.
Thank you. Thank you.
I know. I know I won't spend $30 on a font. I am not the guy. Because that's 30 American, which is what, 50 Canadian or something?
Just about. So yeah. So why don't we look at some of these awesome graphics you've got here for us, Bud? Are there any of the ones that you've included here that you want to speak to that jump out at you?
Now I'm not sure. The only one that I really like that signifies the point is it says fonts matter. I have a whole bunch of different fonty kind of jokey ones, but one says fonts matter. And there's one with a big scrolly text, and it's like, you'll always be mine, and a big heart. And that sends a certain message. And then right next to it, there's another one, but it's more of like somebody scrawled like blood with a finger and said, you'll always be mine, and big mess.
The murder,
so it's
the
the
murderous
exact same words, two very different messages. The murderous font, yeah. So that's the other ones are in there, and hopefully they send the message that the different fonts we do change our messages, and hopefully our message as educators is let's help the students. But that's all I've got. Other than that, I have three little things. The word of the podcast is fonts, because we've spent a bunch of time talking about that.
Go figure.
Question of the podcast are, how are educators making decisions regarding font choice in educational endeavors?
Fantastic.
And my bet is they're not. And the phrase of the podcast is spend $30 on it. Why not?
I'm typing this into the WordPress because that's how far I am now. Spend $30 on it. Exclamation point. Why not? Okay, radical. Well, I think that's pretty sweet. I think we've done. I do feel like this is going to warrant some further attention as our knowledge and experience and usage enhances or expands, and we welcome some engagement. I will say that with the last episode, we did a recording, and I neglected to mention during the recording that my good friend and my best friend's dad, John Bowie, Chuck Bowie, the dad, actually, he's a retired government civil service worker of some renown, federal government, and he's transitioned into a career which sort of overlapped a bit when he was retiring, of being a novelist on a sort of smaller press, and he's writing these mystery novels. And he's just a really thoughtful, cool guy. And he commented on the WordPress post for our show about imposter syndrome, and to the effect that he didn't, or rather, he saw it as being a significant thing well and above outside of education. And anyway, I did a little video reply to it in the notes last time, but if anybody wants to engage with us, that's a really spiffy way of doing it. So to Chuck or to anybody else who's out there that's thinking of commenting, we'd be, I think, quite interested to hear about your observations and lessons lived, or foibles or hangups about fonts. Because if you don't have an opinion about fonts, you're just not thinking about it hard enough. And all you have to do is start asking yourself questions for just a moment or two about fonts, and then you're going to realize not only do you have opinions, but those opinions are deeply held. So good times. I've enjoyed this topic quite a lot, Doug. Thank you for that.
Oh,
anything else you want to put out here, bud?
Out of left field.
No.
Other than
anything else?
I've enjoyed it, and I'll see you later.
Okay, good stuff. Until next time, everybody. Bye for now.